Hello students and welcome back to Lore of the Iron Kingdoms with me, Professor Caster. Today we are going to be continuing going over the Trollblood faction, and we are in one of my favorite parts, the units and the solos of the Trollblood faction. We will be starting up with the more warrior, old school, traditional fighters of the Trollbloods. Then we'll be moving on to the Fell Callers, then the Mystics, and then we will be going into more of the modern fighters with all of their fun firearms and weaponry that they have at their disposal, mostly from the coffers of Signar, because they use Trollbloods as more of a buffer region between Signar and, of course, other more violent nations. But before we begin, if you are enjoying these, please hit that like button, please subscribe, and please comment just to let me know you are in class. And if you have anything you want to say about Trollbloods, do it now, because we love seeing anything in the comments. Also, before we begin, thank you again to Steamforge Games for letting me continue to read the fantastic lore of Warmachine and the Iron Kingdoms. And without further ado, let's begin the Warriors of the Trollbloods. But before we begin with the actual reading of the units, let's go over, I have a quick little overview right here that we are going to be reading. Which is also weirdly called Warriors of the Trollbloods. The Trollkin who take up arms against their numerous enemies come from many different local Kriels and localities. It is their tradition that binds them as warriors of their race. In recent years, the rise of the United Kriels has seen new traditions arise with efforts to modernize Trollkin fighting techniques to resemble a more organized military. Stoic determination and fierce courage are hallmarks of all Trollkin warriors. Those who can endure might earn the right to become champions and heroes to their people. Heroes are peerless fighters whose names are passed down from one generation to the next or immortalized in runes carved on Kriel stones. Champions are the hardened veterans every young warrior aspires to become. However, not every youth is prepared for the hardship champions endure. While less committed warriors return to peace of their Kriels to sire offspring, heroic champions refuse to put down their weapons until death takes them, moving from battle to battle, accumulating scars and legends. The diversity of Kriels across Western Amorn has seen the rise of a range of fighting styles, from the Fin Blades with their signature weapons to the bison-riding Long Riders and to the rifle-wielding Pig Scouts. Regardless of chosen weapons, each of these groups has learned how to harness their skills for the good of the Kriels. Among veteran bands, these warriors work seamlessly together, balancing their various strengths and weaknesses. Warriors generally follow a charismatic and successful chief to whom they pledge loyalty. Those warriors from the most aggressive Kriels, especially among the Northkin, may be motivated to fight by the desire to earn glory, but more often those who fight for the kin do so from a desire to protect their people and to preserve their culture from extinction, a threat that loomed in recent years. Today, almost every adult Trollkin has been involved in at least a few skirmishes as enemies encroach from all sides. One of the greatest military advantages of Trollkin warriors is their resilience and the speed with which they recover from injuries. While Trollkin possess the slowest regenerative capabilities among troll species, their capacity is still far beyond that of humans. Trollkins can regenerate entire limbs and missing organs, though the process can take months. Smaller injuries can be shrugged off in a matter of hours if food is readily available. Both trolls and pigs regenerate even more rapidly, able to regrow arms and legs in mere minutes or hours. Their regenerative capability is so great that severed limbs become whelps, stunted and short-lived yet sentient creatures. It is not uncommon for bands of Trollkins or pigs to be accompanied by one or more small whelps, which they treat like pets or mascots for the unit. Trollblood supply lines are often tenuous, and the hunger is constant companion to most warriors. When food is available, the lion's share goes to the trolls that accompany the warbands. Few Trollkin leaders take liberties with rations, and it is some consultation that the warriors that their chief eat know better than they do. Even the most honored elders and mystics join their kin on the battlefield, giving up privileged lives to help ensure the survival of their people. Food must often be scavenged or plundered by bands on the march, raided or taken from settled communities or military supply convoys of their enemies. Alongside the armed warriors, the most formidable warbands include the support of mystics, sorcerers, shamans, stone scribes, fell callers, and chroniclers. Sorcerers command the raw power of elements. Fell callers belt out shouts that can shatter stone, and shamans can invoke the rage of their goddess against the enemies of the Kriels. Chroniclers and stone scribes bring the legends of their people into battle to inspire greater heroics as well as to inscribe new accomplishments. Small Kriel stones are brought physically onto the battlefield, serving as reservoirs of mystically potency to shield those fighting nearby. The large divide among the Trollbloods warriors exists between those who adhere to old traditions and those who have embraced the weapons and tactics of modern warfare. For generations, most Trollbloods warriors learned their discipline at the feet of their elders and wielded weapons handed down to them by their kith. Each warrior was taught to fight as a peerless individual, competing with his brother in arms, and group cohesion and coordination were tenuous at best. This tradition has become increasingly difficult to maintain in the face of the escalating war for survival that has swept up in the Trollbloods as a people. The leaders of the United Kriels have begun to embrace modern regiments, adopting tactics and training techniques from the Iron Kingdom's armies. Such warriors are learning to take orders from superiors just as professional soldiers do, and their officers do not tolerate the brawling and insolence so common among regular Kriel warriors. The Trollbloods soldiers are more disciplined than most of their kind and are trained to respect a Trollbloods semblance of chain of command, traits almost unheard of among the fighters of the previous generation. Warlocks like Captain Gunbjorn and Grizzle Bloodsong have been advocates for this new discipline, and Madrak Ironhide has endorsed their efforts even as he also believes in older traditions. The fighting forces of the United Kriels have adopted their own rank structure. Though the ranks are meaningless to the warbands these soldiers sometimes fight beside, traditional and modern elements of the fighting Kriels tend to naturally segregate, looking to their respective superiors. There is not always a clear or obvious chain of command when these groups are mixed, though all are expected to obey the ranking war chief. Even the most modernized Trollbloods warriors remain connected with their traditions and ceremonies of their people. Ritual tattoos are common among Trollbloods warriors. These symbolic designs utilize specially toxic pigments that Trollbloods do not metabolize and that resist their skin's ability to restore itself. Some groups also wear a shared Kriel or warband Kotari that shows their unity. Still, every Trollbloods places a high value on individual freedom, and every Trollbloods warrior sees himself as potentially a great champion, hoping to play a key role in preserving the future for the Kriels. And that is the Trollbloods warrior class. They have modernized, they have warriors, and they usually don't work directly with each other. I think even in the theme list, they kind of segregate those as well. But having both the ability to shoot heavy range cannons and be able to, chase in your Trollbloods to, axe somebody in the face is very, very fun. But let's get into the warrior rank, the more less disciplined, as they said. We're going to start with the most numerous and potentially the smallest in comparison to other Trollbloods, like champions or whatever. But these are the most fluid. Kriel Warriors. Kriel Warriors are bands of irregulars drawn from among the Trollbloods Kriels. Though few of them would claim to be professional soldiers, the hardships endured by these brave Trollbloods have accustomed them to the reality of constant warfare facing their scattered people. Because life in the wilderness is inherently difficult, most Trollbloods learn basic fighting skills at an early age. All able-bodied Trollbloods must know how to fight, hunt, and protect their people. Bands of Kriel Warriors receive only minimal additional training before they're being sent out into the field, where they gain their true education in the art of war. A chief component to this limited training is learning to fight alongside full-blood trolls. A Trollbloods quickly learns to be vigilant around his thick-skulled allies, particularly when the trolls are wounded or hungry. Most of these warriors have already seen time in battle, serving on the front lines against a myriad enemies facing the Trollbloods Kriels. They are led by a trusted Dunian shaman who serve their communities. These feral priests lead by example, charging into the fray to show their enemies the power of Dunia's wrath. Yes, and these guys will be the standard rank and file of the Kriel Warriors. Not the best, but not the worst, because they're still Trollbloods and they're still very, very hardy. But let's read over their just Mark IV card real quick. Shouldn't take too long, just to kind of get a feel for him. And also, as most trolls are, he's going to be tough. So expect to hear that word a lot in this reading. Alrighty, here they are. Kriel Warriors. Trollblood Northkin. There are quite a few of these guys that became Northkin, especially since these guys got pulled in, just to give them some additional special effects. So they are tough. They have an immunity to ice damage, and they have combined melee attack. They are unyielding, which means if this model gains a +2 arm against melee attacks, which is great because here's their stat line. They are speed 5, which is pretty quick for a troll. Mat 5 because they're a regular warrior. Defense 12 and base arm 15. So when they're in melee, it jumps up to a 17. So you want to get these guys into melee as quick as possible. For most of the warrior class, that is always the battle plan. Get into melee as fast as possible. Their weapons include a hand weapon. It is a Mat 5, range 1, POW 10, and a shield of a Mat 5, range 1, POW 9. These guys do get way better if they're given I believe they have a couple of unit attachments that we're about to read. But you can see baseline warrior. You get 5 of these guys, so 5 medium base trolls. Still good for blocking the enemy, especially if you're just trying to use these guys to hold the line. And at a 17 arm against melee, you can really block most charge lanes with these guys. But let's move on to some companions that these units are usually seen with to make them a little bit more dangerous than they already are. Kriel Warrior Caber Throwers. A weapon attachment to the Kriel Warriors. What passes for Trollkin entertainment would amaze and horrify most humans. Many of these customs evolved from ritualized games intended to ready able-bodied warriors of the Kriels for battle. Feats of strength, stamina, and endurance are all commonplace among the wild Kriels. Many draw from practices that also have applications in battle. Hurling cabers has proven a surprisingly devastating, if crude, form of attack throughout the centuries. Such demonstrated effectiveness prompted some Kriels to add this sport to their winter entertainment, both to keep the warriors in fighting form and determine which Trollkin would wield the cabers in actual combat. Cabers were originally made from great wooden poles, but Kriels of the Gnarls took this weapon to an extreme by using stone columns the size that would seem impossible to lift, let alone thrown. These stone cabers continued to prove their well worth the back-breaking effort of carrying them into the battlefield as the Trollkins send them tumbling forward in bone-pulping power. Anything caught in the caber's path is usually reduced to paste, and even those few beasts hardy enough to endure such a blow will generally be knocked off their feet by the pitching columns. Only particularly strong and stout Trollkins, who boast endurance considered extraordinary even among their own kith, can regularly carry these massive weapons across long distances. And yes, they are literally just throwing stone columns at people, which is very, very Trollkin-like. Rudimentary weapons, very useful. But let's read how much more useful these are when they're added to their Kriel Warrior group. They are tough, and they are also immune to ice damage. Speed 5, Mat 5, Defense 12, and Arm 15. They have Take Up. So if this model is destroyed, a Kriel Warrior model next to it will take over this one. So let's read how that plays out. If this model is destroyed, you can choose a trooper in this unit within 1 inch of the destroyed model. Remove the trooper from the table instead of this model. This model has the same number of unmarked damage boxes as the chosen trooper. And I don't think these guys have damage boxes, so I guess that's usually for that. He also has Unyielding, so he also gets a +2 arm while in melee. So I guess the thing that moves around is the caber, so the next Kriel Warrior just picks up the caber if the original one is taken out. Let's read why the caber is so dangerous. Mat 5, range 2, so they can swing this weapon. It's very funny. And it's POW 13, so much more powerful than their run-of-the-mill weapons they got. We have the ability on this weapon called Momentum. A small or medium-based model directly hit by this attack is slammed D3 inches directly away from this model. The power of the collateral damage is equal to the power of this weapon. In addition to suffering a normal damage roll, large base models hit by this weapon become knocked down. Alright, so we want to make that very clear. Not everybody's knocked down by this, only large base models are also knocked down. So I just want to make that note. I've missed that before, and I just liked having that in there. And then we have Single Shot. After an attack with this weapon is resolved, this model cannot make another attack with it for 1 round. So that is a very, very useful thing. I guess because it makes them super powerful how that goes. But it looks like whenever you read it, I guess that is only ever... You can only make that one every other turn? Round? I don't know. I'll have to look that up. Let me know in the comments if you know exactly how that works. The way I read it, you can use it once and you can't make them attack again, but you know what? I'm not entirely sure. Some things I'm not 100% sure on. So, you know, if you're a seasoned Trollkin player for the new Mark IV, let me know in the comments below. These guys are very dangerous, but let's move on to their command attachment. See how those guys take these guys up to 11. Kriel Warriors, Standard, and the Piper. The Kriel is the heart of Trollkin life and culture. Each Kriel has its own customs and traditions, most often expressed in unique Qatari patterns on their clothing, and in the music of their fell collars and pipers. When Kriel Warriors go into battle, they march in time to the music of their people and beneath a great banner that speaks to them their entire extended family. Each Kriel inscribes its history into stone, but it also records upon the cloth. When the Kriels are forced to move, not all of its stones can be transported, so their banners become potent symbols that remind them of their shared past and the kin for whom they fight. A standard whose brazier is fully fueled and burning brightly is visible from impressive distances. Its colors readily recognizable to all. The sight of their lit banner against the night sky has inspired many warriors to battle on despite gaping wounds and tremendous loss of blood, or to march beyond the limits of even Trollkin endurance. Pipes have long been the favorite instrument of the Trollkin, who possess the hearty, huge lungs of natural pipers. Lively songs coordinate steps on long journeys and reinvigorate Kriel warriors to force marches in order to arrive where needed with good speed. The mournful song of the pipers also echoes over the battlefield after battle. These plaintive and haunting dirges for the dead remind all who survived to fight the cost of victory. So yeah, these guys will do a lot for their units that they are in, taking them up to number 11. But let's see what we got here. We got, we'll start with the standard bearer because, well, he's here. And I find it interesting that their most important things they don't have really a command. It's more of just the flag that reminds them to keep pushing on, and then the music that, you know, ignites their warrior spirit, which makes sense after reading about them to begin with, because they don't really have a command structure per se. It's whoever's the strongest in the unit, so that actually kind of makes sense. But let's read over the standard bearer. We have a speed 5, mat 5, defense 12, armor 15, tough and immune to ice. His abilities are granted inspiration. So while this model is in play, units gain a +1 to attack rolls. Fantastic. Having gets them up to a mat of 6, most of them. Then we have granted rise. So while this model is in play, models in its units that are knocked down at the beginning of your mate's phase stand up, which is great since these guys all have tough. Then we also have take up. So if it's the same as the other one, if this guy is killed in battle, one of the other Kriel warriors can take the flag and be replaced. The model will be replaced by the flag model. And then he also has unyielding. So if he is in, if people are in melee, his defense goes up to a 17 with that +2. Then he has a melee weapon, which is great because I feel like in Mark IV, all the standard bearers got a little bit better because their shield became a weapon, which, you know, kind of adds more to the adds more attacks, and you always want more attacks than less, right? But his mat is a 5, technically a 6 with this +1, range 1, pound 9, and adding inspiration makes these guys better. Adding rise makes these guys way better. So that is a great. Especially since these guys are the standard dudes, so you can actually get quite a few units of these guys, especially if you just like having a bunch of Trollkin on the battlefield. But let's move on to the Piper, who is also tough, also immune to ice damage, and he also has combined melee. I guess the standard bearer doesn't have combined melee, but it's because the Piper also has a hand weapon too. So there it is. So the Piper gives granted Pathfinder, so models in this play gain Pathfinder so they can run through rough terrain obstacles without an issue. Then he also has Take Up, so if he is killed, somebody else will take up the horns and blow them for him. And then he also has Unyielding, so he has a +2 arm against melee damage rolls. So, and then he has his hand weapon at a Mat 5, range 1, and POW 10. So these guys, to your Kriel Warriors, give a grand total of a +1 attacks, getting them up to a Mat 6. Gives them the ability to rise during maintenance phase if they were knocked down, which, you know, when you have tough, if you're not killed, you're knocked down, so that is very useful. And then they have a Pathfinder, so they can run through rough terrain obstacles, so they can get over woods without any kind of issues. So yeah, it takes these guys from kind of a little bit abysmal to pretty dang good in the long run. And having an arm 17 tough is always very, very useful in that as well. And mixing with some of the more interesting spells from standard warcasters, these guys can become quite a force on the battlefield. And there's a bunch of them, because I think you can get quite a few, because this guy the normal unit comes in a size 5. This is +2 more guys, and then the Kriel Warriors. The Kriel Warriors, I think you get 1 per 1 point, so, but you can have up to 3 additional Kriel Warrior caper throwers. So I think that you can get a full unit of 10 on this with all the unit attachments, weapon attachments. So it makes these guys pretty dang useful in the battlefield. But after the reading of the setup and after these guys, I think we are going to cut the video off here, just because we got a lot more to get into for the warrior races, and we're going to get into some of the more bigger heavy hitters that are fewer in numbers. But thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today and listening to me chit chat about the warriors of the Trollbloods, and then go over their little description at the beginning. If you could, please hit that like button. Please subscribe and share and do all the fun stuff. And if you could, please comment. It doesn't even have to be about anything about these guys. It could be about anything in Warmachines, or any potential topics that you would like to go over with, well, pretty much whatever faction. Or if you have any thoughts about, any of our mini factions being read by Professor Clocksworth, let me know. Always going to be very useful, especially since we're coming to the end, or if we haven't already ended it yet, with the Gatormen faction. Also, thank you again to Steamforge Games, who now run all the Warmachine stuff, for letting me continue to read all this fantastic lore. And without further ado, class dismissed.